You didn't even make your Pikachu evolve. You haven't learned anything yet.
On February 27th, Nintendo and Game Freak released their latest Pokemon Presents, an event dedicated to news all about the world's largest multimedia franchise. After showcasing a plethora of new content coming to their various current releases like Pokemon Unite, Cafe, and Arceus, they closed things off in typical Nintendo presentation fashion with a sneak peek at the next major titles in the franchise, Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. There are very brief glimpses of the in-game world, showing us what is hopefully a large open world with various Pokemon we've already seen. The towns and open fields give me hope that we'll have a more open-ended experience for a mainline title, and I'm optimistically hopeful that they won't just do like they did with Sword and Shield and sequester the open world portion of the game to a single area. The trailer ends with a glimpse at our new 3 starters, Sprigatito, Fuecoco, and Quaxly, and a release window of 2022 was given. Now, I could go frame by frame with the trailer, trying to find hidden potential secrets or make assumptions about where the region is based on or whatever, but that's not really something I like to do. Instead, I want to focus my efforts on this specific decision and why I think it might be time for Game Freak to retire the 2-game release structure for new Pokemon games, at least in its current form. When Pokemon Legends Arceus came out, I, like many people, thought that this was finally the big step forward that the franchise had been in desperate need of to keep it from feeling stagnant. It offers enough differences from what came before that it's a fresh take on the franchise, and I hope that Game Freak continues with experiments like this going forward, even with Violet and Scarlet. But the biggest thing about Arceus' release is that they released only this version, not Pokemon Legends Arceus and like Giratina or something. But with the announcement of Gen 9, they went back to the 2-game system? Why? I want to state right up front that I personally do not mind the 2-game system, but that is also because I have a partner who also plays the Pokemon games. It's much easier for us to buy each version rather than 2 copies of the same game, and it gives us a reason to trade back and forth and whatnot. I know this isn't the case for everyone, and this system is out of date for a number of reasons, but for Claude and me it works fine. However, it feels very much like Game Freak is continuing this tradition simply because that's how it's always been done, which stifles creativity. Unless we receive news sometime in the future about the new games doing something unique and different to the formula like Arceus did, I think it's safe to assume that Gen 9 will be similar to Sword and Shield in scope and structure. Sure, they may have more open areas or whatever, but it'll still most likely be a largely linear experience going from gym to gym, collecting badges, and then fighting the Elite Four. So what if we changed that? What if the multiple versions of the game had a specific purpose behind them, rather than just being the same game mostly copied and pasted with 1 or 2 exclusive Pokemon between them? Well, that's what this video is about, and it's actually one I've thought about making for a while, so thanks for giving me a reason to make this video, Game Freak. I have 3 ideas on what the Pokemon franchise could do to help change up the formula a bit, each one changing up a major facet of how these games are played. For the most part, these 3 ideas won't really go into story specifics or anything, and are more about changing up certain gameplay mechanics. I have ideas on how a story might work with each of them, but I want this to come out relatively close to the Scarlet Violet announcement, so we'll skip that for now. And with that, let's start by talking about the first major change I would want to see to the Pokemon formula: 3 professions. Pokemon has dabbled with different professions in the games before, both in mainline series and in spin-offs, but with the exception of like the Pokemon Ranger games or Pokemon Snap, the vast majority of the games have focused on trainers being the best like no one ever was. I mean, I guess there was also Pokken Tournament, but no one really wants to talk about that one, so. What if we could instead choose alternate career paths within the game world, each one with their own leveling path and objectives? Pokemon has dabbled with one-off ideas before, but instead of making my Pikachu temporarily swole or giving my Lucario dreads, what if it had a more tangible effect on the gameplay and story? For the purposes of this discussion, the 3 professions I have in mind are Trainer, which would just be your standard sort of playthrough, Professor, which would focus more on training and studying Pokemon, and Breeder, which would be more focused on the thing Pokemon has kind of struggled to really do with the games, which is befriending and caring for your perpetual little slave friends. When you start this new game, you'll still get the standard opening of waking up and getting your first Pokemon from a selection of either fire, grass, or water, but you'll also be able to choose which profession you would want to undertake. There could also be 3 potential friends who would slot into the other 2 professions, and depending on which career path you choose depends on which of those 3 friends becomes your rival. I say rival in quotes here because Pokemon hasn't really had a true rival since like Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, I think, so this is more like your friendly competitor or something. Either way, each of the 3 are assigned to a specific role, and if you take over any of the roles, then that friend that was originally assigned to that role will just become your primary rival. Playing through the game would be similar to current releases, with each career path still having battling as a core focus, but each one would focus on more than just leveling up your Pokemon to be the best there ever was. Like with the Professor route, you would study the attacks that you do and maybe have a special minigame that can help maximize their potential. Or with the Breeders, it would be about maximizing a specific stat with your Pokemon as opposed to going out and trying to kill all the other Pokemon or whatever. Battling is a core mechanic of basically every Pokemon game, so we'll keep it in and try and balance it around each of the different careers. The big difference with this game would be each of the towns. Since only one of the 3 career paths is all about collecting gym badges, there would either need to be 3 distinct building types in each of the main towns, or the gyms would have to feature 3 distinct areas to them. Obviously, the gym would be for trainers, there could be a lab attached to each of the gyms for professors, and a ranch out back or to the side or something for the breeders. Each one would have a unique mission for that specific path, but the other 2 paths can still access all 3 of these areas and gain new objectives. Like maybe the trainer visits the lab and they ask them to do some research for them that focuses on battling, or the professor visits the gym part and are tasked with collecting data points while watching different battles, or something along those lines. It's an idea that would obviously require a lot of work, and given Game Freak's reluctance over the years to expand the formula, I doubt that they would want to make 3 unique-ish paths. But what if they had to do 1 less unique path? So what if we switch things up from having 3 unique professions in 1 game to 2 unique stories across 2 games? One of my biggest personal gripes with Pokemon stories between versions is that, with the exception of maybe the legendary Pokemon and like a gym or 2, they are basically the exact same. With some of the older titles, there were much more dynamic changes, like how in Ruby and Sapphire, your enemy team was determined by the version you chose, or how you could capture both Lugia and Ho-Oh in Gold and Silver, but you caught one of them at level 40 and one of them at level 70, and which one you caught at which spot was determined on the version you played. I think from Diamond and Pearl onward, the story has largely been the same between versions, with minimal differences between the 2. Like in Pokemon X and Y, for instance, Team Flare's plan is to use the legendary Pokemon's power for their plan, and it literally doesn't matter if that Pokemon is Yveltal or Xerneas. Both of them share the same purpose in this scenario, and the literal only difference is which one you have in your party once you catch it. So what if the story was more drastically different between games? What if instead of just having a rock gym instead of an ice gym, or giving me Growlithe instead of Vulpix, what if the story was, for the most part, different between versions? There's still the starting bit where you get your starter or are introduced to your best friend who you constantly beat the shit out of, and then you get to become a 10-year-old homeless drifter, but the big difference is where that happens. Let's say for this hypothetical new region that it is shaped like an octagon, with each of the major towns positioned at each of the 8 corners. This allows an easy path for players to follow, as well as an easy way for the developers to make this 2-story structure I'm proposing. At the north, south, east, and west of the octagon are 4 distinct islands, each one with special alternative towns that aren't really based around the gyms. At the east and west are the 2 starting towns, and depending on the version you choose, determines which one you start at. As you make your way around the island, both versions would have their paths go around said island in a clockwise fashion, with the towns remaining static in their spots. So the first gym for the trainer starting on the east island would be like the grass gym, for instance, but that grass type gym would then be the 5th gym for the west start. In both instances, the teams that each gym leader has would be proportional to their intended difficulty, similar to how the Pokemon Origins handled the gym leaders having multiple teams of Pokemon for trainers of different skill level. This would work with your rival and special events as well, where they would always appear in specific parts depending on where you start from, with maybe minor changes to the area or story stuff like your battle with your rival taking place in a bank rather than a store or something. Otherwise, the game would likely play out the same. I envision there being an exterior ring of paths for the gyms, an interior ring that attaches to those that has one giant massive wild area, and then the center area could act as either Victory Road and the Elite Four's location, or like a massive mountain where you find the legendary Pokemon, or more of the wild area or something, with the northern island acting as like the Elite Four site and the southern island acting as endgame content. This proposed idea would certainly be a simpler task than creating 3 unique paths for 3 different career types, but it also has its own host of complications. Crafting multiple teams for 8 trainers and making sure they feel balanced is a daunting task, especially if they stick to the single type gyms that they've done for basically every game that came out before this. But what if they made a game that focused on that past, giving players a chance to relive classic events from the previous generation of Pokemon? And with that, I want to talk about my final idea for how they can change the Pokemon formula, acknowledging the multiverse outside of endgame content. For a few games now, Pokemon has started acknowledging what is known as the multiverse, something that absolutely no other franchise has so much as scratched the surface of so far. Nope. None at all. It's an entirely new concept exclusive to Pokemon. Okay, look, I know it seems like this would be just chasing a trend here, but please just hear me out. Pokemon has already begun exploring the multiverse, the most obvious examples I can think of being the endgame content for Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, or the mere existence of Ultra Beasts introduced in Sun and Moon. They openly acknowledge that the multiverse is a concept within Pokemon as a potential way of explaining the differences between versions, or even why older Pokemon generations don't have features or Pokemon from newer ones, but they could easily take this one step further. Things will start out pretty normal. You get your starter Pokemon, get gym badges, fight the mob, or whatever. But this section goes by surprisingly quick, even for a Pokemon game. And just as you're getting ready to take on the Elite Four or the final gym leader or whatever, in typical Pokemon game fashion, something big story-wise happens, and you, a 10-year-old, must go and save the world. But instead of it being a man trying to use capitalism to destroy everything, or whatever the fuck Lysander's plan was, what if a hole in reality opens up, and you are designated as having to step through to try and close the rift? But it's here that things will take a dramatic shift. Once you enter the portal, everything around you gets a massive visual downgrade, and you wake up in Pallet Town with Pokemon Red and Blue's graphics and gameplay. You explore the town in a few opening areas of the game with NPCs wondering who you are and being confused when you ask them about things like Dynamaxing or shiny Pokemon. There could even be region-specific Pokemon that could only be caught in each region, limiting the number of Pokemon the devs have to worry about including in the primary area of the game, but also giving a natural story reason to help get old fan favorites into it, without having to, release DLC. As you continue through the area, things start to shift and change from what happened originally, and you learn that a new legendary Pokemon is ripping apart the fabric of reality and connecting all the previous games together, hence the portal that opens up back in your time during the events of this game. You chase this Pokemon and maybe the main villain of the game through Pokemon's past, highlighting some of the key features of these previous games with their individual graphical designs, bringing your Pokemon to that era with their own custom sprites to better allow them to fit into this design change. It's an incredible undertaking for them to do, considering they would likely introduce new Pokemon into this new game, bringing the total number of Pokemon well over 1,000. But I think it'd be neat. But here's the thing. That's not where this story ends. Once you capture this legendary Pokemon, you are returned to your original region, and it's here that the game truly opens up. The reason I said that you fast track the first 8 badges originally is because thanks to this Pokemon's ability to travel between dimensions, you're now able to travel back to those multiple dimensions to take on unique challenges, refight old gym bosses, capture any Pokemon that you didn't get in your initial run through that area, and gain access to a few extra special dimensions that allow you to trade with other players and even visit their games. What I've essentially proposed here is a Pokemon game that starts out like a normal Pokemon title, but slowly evolves from a true celebration of the franchise's history into the first ever true Pokemon MMO, something fans of the franchise have wanted for decades. Sure, this concept feels more like Destiny or something, in that interacting with other players would be more limited to specific areas, rather than a true ended MMO like RuneScape or something. But being able to meet up with your friends in-game rather than just the battle mechanic could offer a whole host of additional modes and content. Look, I know that all 3 of these concepts require a lot of work to properly implement. Even something as seemingly simple as making sprites of every Pokemon in the style of Pokemon Red and Blue is a daunting task, and I'd be basically asking them to do that for every version of Pokemon that used sprites. These are all just hypothetical ideas being shouted into the ether in the hopes that someone sees them and maybe tries to implement parts of them into future titles. I have enjoyed the Pokemon games since they originally came to the US, and while I'm likely to still pick up each title for nostalgia or to keep up with my living complete Pokedex, I will still complain when they don't do anything new with the formula. They have released very little information about Violet and Scarlet as of this video going live, so maybe they have some massive gameplay change planned for this generation that will completely revolutionize the franchise. But more than likely what will happen is they'll introduce a new one-off mechanic like Z-moves and call it a day. I know Game Freak isn't going to get rid of the 2-version gimmick anytime soon, so this was all just me trying to come up with ideas that could utilize this feature while still expanding what the games can offer players. But at the end of the day, these games are intended for a younger audience, and forcing a Nuzlocke game mode feature into the game or making it a full-on MMO would be too extreme and unlikely to happen. This is just my way of offering ideas on how this franchise could evolve, because right now the whole thing feels like it's holding onto an Everstone with how much it hasn't changed over the years, despite leveling up in a number of ways. But with that said, I am kind of curious to know what you would change or add to help expand the Pokemon games. Let me know down in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe and do a lot of other fun YouTube-y stuff while you're down there. I live stream here on YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday if you want some additional content, and if you follow me on Twitter, I post the occasional poll for upcoming videos or live streams, as well as silly stuff like this. But for now, thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you in the next video. Take care.